Why do we overthink small moments? Have you ever replayed one small moment again and again in your mind? A short reply, a slightly different tone, a facial expression that lasted less than a second. Someone saying, "It's fine," but somehow, it did not feel fine. And then hours later, your mind is still there. You are no longer in the conversation. You are no longer looking at their face. You are no longer waiting for the message. But inside your mind, the moment keeps repeating. Why did they say it like that? Did I sound strange? Are they upset with me? Did I do something wrong? The moment was small, but your mind made it echo for hours. So why do we overthink small moments? One reason is that the human mind does not like uncertainty. When something is clear, we can usually move on. If someone says, "I'm busy today, but I'll talk to you tomorrow," there is not much room for guessing. But small social signals are often unclear. A short reply can mean many things. Maybe they are tired, maybe they are busy, maybe they are distracted, maybe they are upset, maybe it has nothing to do with you at all. But because the signal is unclear, the mind tries to fill in the missing information. And when we feel emotionally connected to someone, our brain does not treat that missing information as small. It treats it as important. This is why overthinking often happens more with people we care about. If a stranger replies coldly, we may forget it quickly. But if someone important replies with one short word, it can feel much heavier. Not because the word itself is powerful, but because the relationship matters. Overthinking is often the mind trying to protect something that feels emotionally important. Another reason we overthink small moments is that the brain is naturally sensitive to possible threats. In psychology, this is often connected to negativity bias. Negativity bias means the mind tends to notice and remember negative or threatening information more strongly than neutral or positive information. This helped humans survive in the past. If our ancestors ignored danger, they could get hurt. So the brain learned to pay special attention to anything that might mean rejection, conflict, danger, or loss. But in modern relationships, this same system can become too active. A slow reply is not a wild animal. A quiet expression is not proof of rejection. A small change in tone is not always a sign that something is wrong. But the nervous system may still react as if it needs to solve a problem quickly, so the mind starts scanning. What did they mean? What changed? What should I have said differently? How can I fix this before it becomes worse? This is how a tiny moment becomes a mental loop. Overthinking also grows when we start reading emotion as evidence. For example, imagine someone says, "Okay," in a shorter way than usual. Your mind may first notice the difference. Then your body may feel anxious. Then your thoughts may say, "I feel anxious, so maybe something really is wrong." But feeling anxious does not always mean the situation is dangerous. Sometimes anxiety is not a signal about the other person. Sometimes it is a signal about our own fear. The problem is that overthinking can make feelings look like facts. I feel rejected becomes, "They are rejecting me." I feel annoying becomes, "I must have annoyed them." I feel like something changed becomes, "Something definitely changed." But emotions are not always accurate reports. They are experiences. They tell us what we are afraid of, what we care about, and where we feel vulnerable. They do not always tell us the full truth. This is especially common when someone already struggles with self-doubt. If deep down, you are afraid that you are too much, too sensitive, not interesting enough, or easy to leave, then small moments can feel bigger than they are. A delayed reply may not feel like a delayed reply. It may feel like confirmation. See? They are losing interest. See? You said too much. See? You always ruin things. But often, the mind is not responding only to the present moment. It is responding to old fears through the present moment. The small signal becomes a screen, and your past anxiety gets projected onto it. This is why two people can experience the same situation differently. One person may see a short message and think, "They must be busy." Another person may see the same message and think, "They are pulling away." The difference is not always the message. Sometimes the difference is the fear behind the interpretation. Overthinking small moments also gives us a false sense of control. When we keep analyzing, it can feel like we are doing something useful. Maybe if I think about it long enough, I will understand. Maybe if I replay every detail, I will find the answer. Maybe if I figure out what went wrong, I can stop myself from being hurt. But overthinking often does not bring clarity. It brings more possibilities. One thought creates another thought. One interpretation creates another fear. One small detail becomes part of a larger story. They replied late. Their tone was different. They did not use the same emoji. They seemed distracted. They must be tired of me. And suddenly the mind has built an entire emotional story from a few uncertain pieces. This does not mean you are dramatic. It does not mean you are weak. It means your mind is trying very hard to understand something that feels emotionally unsafe. But there is an important difference between noticing and overthinking. Noticing is simple. They replied differently today. Overthinking turns that observation into a conclusion. They replied differently because I did something wrong. Noticing leaves space. Overthinking rushes to meaning. Noticing asks, what else could be true? Overthinking asks, what if the worst thing is true? A healthier response is not to ignore small signals completely. Sometimes small changes do matter. Sometimes tone, distance, and behavior can tell us something. But the key is not to treat every small signal as proof. A moment is information. It is not always evidence. A short reply might mean they are upset, but it might also mean they are working, tired, overwhelmed, distracted, or simply not thinking about the message as deeply as you are. A quiet facial expression might mean discomfort, but it might also mean stress, fatigue, shyness, or something completely unrelated to you. Overthinking usually narrows the meaning too quickly. It takes an unclear moment and gives it one painful explanation. So when you catch yourself spiraling, one helpful question is, what are 3 other possible explanations? Not because you must force yourself to be positive, but because your first anxious interpretation is not always the only truth. Another helpful question is, am I responding to what actually happened, or to what I fear it means? This question creates distance between the event and the story. The event may be simple. They replied 2 hours later. The story may be painful. They do not care about me anymore. When we separate the event from the story, we regain some calm. Because often the pain is not only in the moment itself, the pain is in the meaning we attach to it. At the core, overthinking small moments usually comes from a very human place. We want to be understood. We want to be safe. We want to know that we have not ruined something important. We want to believe that the people we care about still care about us. So the mind watches closely, maybe too closely. It studies every word, every pause, every change in tone, hoping to find certainty. But relationships are not always clear in every second. People have moods. People get tired. People communicate imperfectly. And not every small change is a hidden message. Sometimes a small moment is just a small moment. And sometimes the mind makes it larger because it is carrying a fear that has not been comforted yet. So the next time you find yourself replaying a tiny moment, try to pause. Not to judge yourself, not to shame yourself, but to gently ask, what did I actually see? What am I afraid it means? And is there room for another explanation? Because peace does not always come from finding the perfect answer. Sometimes peace begins when you stop turning every small signal into a sentence against yourself. The moment may have been small, but maybe the echo was not proof that something was wrong. Maybe it was only proof that something inside you wanted to feel safe.